It is 3 a.m. in New York, 8 in London, and 4 on a Thursday afternoon here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Gun-young. We continue our special coverage on the ferry that has capsized off Korea's southwestern coast. A major rescue operation continues on this Thursday afternoon, more than 24 hours after a Korean passenger ferry carrying 475 people listed and started to sink. 9 people have now been confirmed dead, while 287 others remain unaccounted for. Now, most on board the Sewol ferry were teenagers, high school students heading to Korea's resort island of Jeju for a field trip. Let's go straight to our Connie Kim. She is standing by at an emergency management center that's been set up to deal with this tragic incident. Connie, what's the latest?
Yes, unfortunately, we haven't had any news over the number of survivors. The confirmed death toll currently stands at 9, with 5 students being in high school. The Ministry of Security and Public Administration has also confirmed that 5 foreigners were on board. 2 Filipinos, both in their 40s, are confirmed to have been rescued. The whereabouts of the 3 other foreign passengers are unknown, including an 18-year-old Russian student and 2 Chinese nationals of Korean descent in their 30s. According to a press briefing led by the Securities Minister this morning, 179 people have so far been rescued from the ferry. 101 of them are currently being treated in 8 different hospitals. 5 are in critical condition. Now, there were conflicting numbers yesterday about the total number of people on board the ship when it went down. Now, that number currently stands at 475.
Just a lot of confusion here, but one thing is for sure, the whole nation wants everyone found safe and sound. The search and rescue efforts do continue. This is a massive operation. Connie, tell us just how large it is.
Well, an official from the Coast Guard has recently announced that more than 500 rescue divers are on the scene, along with 103 ships and 29 aircraft, all actively searching for survivors. Now, a cooperative search is being led by the Korean Navy and the Coast Guard, but they are battling difficult conditions. However, the official says rain, fast tidal currents, and strong winds are hampering efforts. This afternoon, 3 divers were swept away by the strong currents and went missing, but they have since been rescued safely. To right the ship now on its side, there are 3 cranes currently on their way to Jindo. All 3 are expected to arrive by tomorrow. Now they'll work in tandem to lift the 6,800-ton ferry out of the water.
And we're all waiting anxiously for updates from the government. We hear President Park Geun-hye made her way to the area.
That's right. President Park Geun-hye visited the site of the search and rescue operation off the coast of Korea's southwestern Jindo this Thursday afternoon. She inspected the area and was briefed on the ongoing rescue efforts carried out by the military and Coast Guard. The president urged them to mobilize all their manpower and equipment to rescue as many of the missing as possible.
And we will, of course, continue to monitor the developments in the search and rescue efforts while continuing to hope for the very best in this very difficult time. Our Connie Kim reporting live from the Emergency Disaster Center in Seoul. Let's now go over to our Park Ji-won at the News Center for further details on this incident. Ji-won, there was some fresh hope here in the nation this morning when it was revealed that a series of text messages sent by survivors on the ferry arrived late last night. But those hopes have been tamped down a bit, haven't they?
Yes, Kanyang, at around midnight last night, some 15 hours after the ship started listing, the messages said they were alive, which did raise hopes that more survivors might be found. However, we must note that there is a possibility these messages were sent earlier than that and were just delivered at a later time. And the authorities are also looking into whether text messages were in fact sent by survivors inside the boat.
We continue to look for any signs of hope in this disaster, of course. Another emerged today with talks about a possible air pocket that survivors may be using to stay alive. Tell us about that.
Yes, experts point out that the vessel has not yet completely sunk, as we can see from the footage, and tip of the ferry is still above the surface, which means there could be a giant air pocket there, an air pocket in which survivors could be using to stay alive. And local media reports here have been talking about a case out of Nigeria last year, where a fisherman survived for 60 hours underwater by using such an air pocket until he was safely rescued. So families of survivors, all hope and wish that such a miracle might unfold here in the nation as well.
We're all, of course, hoping for such a miracle at this point. Now, Jiona, with regard to the search efforts, authorities have started pumping oxygen into the hull of the capsized ferry. Now, tell us what they are trying to do exactly.
Well, they are trying to provide air to anyone who may be alive in the ferry. The Coast Guard began pumping oxygen into the vessel at 12:30 this afternoon, local time, to help increase their chances of finding survivors before they left the ship off its side. However, heavy rain and gusts of wind hampered search efforts throughout the morning and this afternoon.
Right, the weather conditions, they don't look too favorable in the Chindo area. Now, we have to note that there is a lot of criticism about the lack of direction and decision-making in hours directly after the accident. So what do we know about that?
Yes, unfortunately, human error is being blamed for the fact that there are so many people trapped inside the listing ship. We've heard reports that the passengers were told to remain where they were when the ship first encountered trouble, which runs counter to what safety experts advise people to do in such situations. They should have headed for open air. Also, there are reports that the captain of the ferry, identified as 60-year-old Lee Jun-seok, was one of the first to jump into a lifeboat, abandoning the sinking ship and hundreds of passengers. Experts say that it's absolutely unacceptable that the captain, who should have been remained on board, giving directions, abandoned the ship, along with other crew who also bailed out pretty quickly. The captain spoke to investigators this morning and said he was truly sorry for the passengers and the victims' families. And according to the nation's Ship Safety Act, the captain has a responsibility to remain on board in the event of trouble until all passengers are safely rescued. Coast Guard officials are currently investigating Lee on charges of manslaughter. And it's also been pointed out that a ferry of this size carries 60 lifeboats on board. This is mandated by the law. However, from the footage released of rescue operations, only one such rescue boat was spotted, meaning the other 59 boats had not even been deployed. Experts think this is all because of the lack of preparedness and training, which all boils down to human error.
Now, Jiwana, we still don't know what caused the ship to capsize. There is still speculation that the ferry might have hit a submerged reef or rocks, or we are getting a more, I suppose, more solid evidence that it might have made a swift turn and diverted its route for some reason. What do we know about that?
Well, the Coast Guard has released provisional finding this morning on what caused the ferry to sink. They say there was an abrupt change in the ship's course, and this could have caused it to list. Due to this, the 180 vehicles and 1,000 tons of cargo on board to shift to one side, ultimately leading the ship to capsize very quickly. This again is a provisional finding, and it's important to repeat that as the investigation into what happened continues.
There are certainly just a lot of questions to be answered. Right now, we're simply hoping that search and rescue teams find survivors in what really has turned into one of the worst disasters South Korea has seen in a very long time. Thank you, Ji-won, for that. And we are just getting reports that the underwater rescue and search and rescue efforts have been terminated for now because of the weather conditions. So we will get back to you on that as that story develops. So the exact cause of this accident is unknown about this, but there is plenty of speculation on how this 100-ton ferry, the second biggest of its kind operating in Korea, went under in less than just 2 hours. Let's try getting a better sense of the situation down in Chindo, what might have caused this huge ferry to sink, and the terrain the rescue teams are dealing with there in Korea's southwestern coast. For that, Kim Kwang-soo joins us live on the phone. He's a professor at Mokpo National Maritime University's Division of Maritime Transportation Systems. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Kim. Now, Professor, what could have possibly caused this massive ferry to capsize and so quickly as well? I mean, this is quite uncommon, I hear.
Now it is highly controversial issue to say the cause of the accident. It is early to conclude the cause of the accident because the accident is under inspection, and the outcome of investigation is not produced yet. However, in my opinion, there is the possibility that the strong tidal currents made the ship deviate from the intended coastline of route and led her to collide or touch with something such as a sunken log happened before arriving the accident site of capsize. Unexpectedly, the ship began to be filled with water and sank in 2 hours. 2 hours are thought to be very short time in capsized the passenger ship. Probably while the ship was damaged and flooded and then lifted to the port side, the vehicles and cargo containers which were loaded and stored on board the ship was supposed to move to port side rapidly, and the list of the ship to port side might be more increased. After all, the ship was capsized quickly due to the loss of ship's stability. The condition of seawater ballast on board the ship was unknown.
Now, Professor, reports are saying that the passenger vessel did not send out a distress signal, but it was rather the passengers that reported the sinking in the first place. What, in your view, could have happened at that time inside this ferry?
It's very hard to say what happened on board the ship at that time. I guess maybe they are trying to not to expose something behind them. So nobody knows that. So very difficult to say at this moment.
Of course, at this point, anything is but a speculation. Now, we've heard that these are very difficult conditions that searchers are working in. Give us some perspective on this area, the water conditions and the general terrain.
The weather forecast says that the weather of today may be a rainy and strong wind. So unfortunately, bad weather will make search and rescue operation more difficult. It is so miserable. Oxygen in the air is critical to the survival of persons confined on board the ship. Oxygen makes up around 21% of the air we breathe. Content of oxygen below the 7% of the air is reported to endanger human life and lead to the loss of life. It is suspected that breathing oxygen deficient air can damage the central nervous system of a human body. Thus, it is impossible for a person to breathe and maintain their lives in the oxygen deficient areas. The lives of person confined on board the sunken ship depend on the content of oxygen in the air trap of the sunken ship. So hypothermia is another important factor to the survival of person at sea. Body temperature below 33 Celsius degree is very danger to the lives of passengers. The present water temperature is reported to be about 12 Celsius degree. The person in the water of 12 Celsius degree is said to be survive only for about 2 or 3 hours at the maximum. So there may be a difficulty in save lives confined on board the ship.
Now, you mentioned air trap there. Let me ask you something that's being speculated widely by the parents of these students, those with loved ones on the ship. They're talking a great deal about air pockets and the hope that there are air pockets on this vessel, which could prove to be quite critical for the survival of those passengers. What are the chances of passengers finding air pockets on a vessel like this in this kind of situation?
So I have no any other information about that. Just we hope that some people survived on board the ship and they have a chance to take a place in the air trap.
Right, and one last question before we let you go. As we all try to make sense out of this accident, what caused this accident, Is there anything to indicate that there was a lapse in inspection of this vessel and that it did not meet safety standards?
Yeah, maybe I guess that they tried to keep the standard of the safety, but something not observed regarding deployment of life raft or launching of life boats. So we are not sure they trained or educated the passengers on board when joined the ship. Something that we cannot now make sure.
All right, thank you for your time and insight, Professor. We are looking forward to some good news from this truly heartbreaking incident. That was Professor Kim Kwang-soo, professor at Mokpo National Maritime University. Now, for a quick recap of the current situation, 287 people are still missing, and the number of confirmed dead has risen in the last couple of hours to 9. 179 people were rescued on Wednesday. Now, this after the Sewol ferry started to sink sometime around 9 a.m. Wednesday morning Korea time. That's well over 24 hours ago, some 20 kilometers off the coast of Jeju Island in southwestern Korea. At this point, it's speculation and just even more speculation. Something that's being discussed heavily, however, is that this terrible incident could have been made worse as passengers on board the ill-fated ferry were told numerous times through an onboard announcement to stay put and not attempt to jump into the sea. It was only after an hour that a final announcement was made for everyone to get off, but by then it could have been too late for some. Son Jung-in has more.
It's been reported that when the accident occurred, the onboard announcement to the passengers was to stay where they were without giving any specific directions. The same announcement was known to have been heard repeatedly for 1 hour before they finally told all the passengers to jump into the sea with their life vests on as the ferry was going to sink. Many say the delayed warning to get off the ferry could have caused a bigger tragedy as many passengers heeded instructions and stayed in their rooms and were later unable to escape as the vessel went down.
A female voice informed us of the situation through a speaker. She said the rescue workers would come soon and she told us to stay put.
The Sewol is one of the biggest ferries in Korea and most of the equipment is electric, including the doors and gates inside. Some experts speculate the generator may have gone off when the ferry began to tilt to the left.
It's highly likely the power cut off. As the ferry tilted, there could have been a total blackout, meaning doors would not open.
Even if the doors were open, the steep incline of the floors may have made escape much more difficult for people trapped inside.
Many people were screaming as the floors inclined and all the equipment and people slid down.
The worst scenario is that if there are still people trapped in the cabin, there won't be enough air for them to breathe. Everyone is praying with all their hearts that this won't be the case and that all those unaccounted for will be rescued safely. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
And to navigate us through this tragic crisis, we are joined live in the studio by Dr. Kim Byung-ju. He is ARIRANG's longtime regular contributor. Dr. Kim, thank you for joining us again. Yes. Now, new speculations have surfaced that this particular ferry may have violated safety standards through refurbishments, perhaps, to hold more passengers in this than its limited capacity. What do we know about that?
Well, I think we need more time and efforts to find out actual violation itself, but it seems to be a fact that actually it has gone through refurbishment or redesigning of the vessel itself when it was imported from Japan after in service about 20 years. Reportedly, we're hearing it has added perhaps a floor on top of the existing 4-floor structure, and so that might have caused overall, because of the vehicle itself, vessel itself has become taller. Of course, it would have become much easier to lose its balance as a whole. So that's one case. But in terms of the number of people, though, the overall total capacity of the vessel itself was about 920 people. But at that time, in this particular journey, 475 people were on board. So probably like slightly above the half of the capacity. So in terms of the loading itself, we don't see a problem here. Possible structural change, as you mentioned, might have contributed to this accident if indeed this was caused by a quick turn of the vessel itself. There is that speculation for sure.
Right. If indeed the cause of this accident is a deviation from its normal route.
Well, actually, about the deviation itself, there were talks about deviation itself, but the thing is now I think what we're hearing is this is a point where vessels coming in from Jeju area and then going down towards Jeju area make a quick changes in terms of their route. These vessels coming up north are supposed to take a certain side of this certain island, while going down they have to take the other side. So maybe rather than taking a different route, maybe vessel might have been, this is once again a speculation, but vessel might have been going inside and going downwards and then realize this is the point where they have to make that turn. And so possibly they're making that turn maybe too abruptly, but not going out of a route.
Right. So perhaps a human error on that part.
Possibly.
Now, this is a rare accident. It's not so frequent that we here in South Korea see such ferry accidents in such a massive scale. But we have seen a few in the past.
Indeed. Back in 1993, about 2 decades ago, I think it was a Sewol Ferry. That was the name of the vessel that got into trouble in 1993. And 292 people lost their lives. So in the worst case, in this case, we could actually match this worst case in 1993 so far. Actually, 1993 was not the worst case. It was a really bad case. The worst case in Korean history was 1970. The name of the ship was Namyeong, and then there we lost about 326 people in the year of 1970. Namyeong was actually coming from Jeju Island to Busan port, and on the way it got into an accident, and once again losing 326 people. Sewol Ferry's case, 1993, the accident happened in northern Jeolla province of Busan area, and once again we then lost like a 292. All the way back in 1953, we had a similar incident in front of Busan port on a ship coming from Yeosu towards Busan, and at that time we lost about 300 people. But the record so far stands at the case with the case of 1970 Namyeong case, where we lost about 326. So some of the observers are saying it's strange that almost every 2 decades we seem to get into this kind of troubles.
Well, it's needless to say, however, that since 1970s and even 1990s, Korea has undergone a rapid development, and we are an advanced country here with high-tech technology available. So we'd like to look into this issue and what really caused this accident.
And also safety regulation has become tougher. So this case, once again, we have to emphasize that this time, this particular ship did not go over the requirement for the maximum number of people. And in other cases in the past, they actually went over the maximum. That's why they got into trouble. This time it was different.
Right. And regardless of what the case is, behind all these accidents, there are, of course, people and their stories. Text messages from these from the passengers who were on the sinking ferry have surfaced. A son thinking he might not make it, telling his mother that he loves her, and another student telling his father that he cannot escape because the ship has tilted too much. And there are other rescue stories coming to light, and our Connie Lee has more.
Text messages, apparently from passengers, paint a harrowing picture of what it was like in the moments directly after the ferry started sinking. One trapped passenger texted his father, telling him about a situation. To this, the father responded, "I know help is on the way, but if possible, get outside." To this, the son texts back, "No, Dad, I can't. The ferry is too tilted. There are no kids out in the hallways." Another passenger, this time a son, texted his mother, "Mom, just in case I don't have another chance to say it, I love you." The mother replied, but clearly unaware of the situation. An exchange between two brothers describes what had happened. The passenger texted that the ferry hit something and stopped moving, but reassured his older brother that a rescue team had arrived. The older brother then replied, telling him not to panic, to stay alert and follow directions, but he heard nothing more. Meanwhile, the stories of survivors show their desperate attempts to live, with some passengers breaking through windows and jumping into waters to be rescued.
I just jumped into the water and started swimming. It was really cold, so I tried to swim as fast as I could.
Stories of heroism are also surfacing, including one where 58-year-old Kim Hong-young saved 20 passengers by himself as a ferry was sinking. Kim reportedly tied a fire hose to curtains and pulled nearly 24 students from the first floor of the ship to the outside so that rescue helicopters could reach them. And another story of heroism is a rescue of a 6-year-old child. The young girl named Kwon Ji-yeon was rescued by 4 passengers, as you can see in this video, in the final moments. During the disaster, she was apparently split up from her parents and brother, who are unfortunately still among the hundreds who are still missing. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kim, for that. And that's all for me at this hour. Do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.